Welcome to Fate vs. Future, the podcast. What is Fate vs. Future, the podcast, you ask? It's the podcast extension of our daily email designed to 10x your knowledge in just 5 minutes. Full disclosure, this podcast is more than just 5 minutes. In fact, it's 43 minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and say right here and right now that this is the best Fate v. Future podcast episode ever. I know this for a fact because this is also the first Fate vs. Future podcast ever. Welcome. In this episode, we will talk and listen to Noah King. He's founder of an ad tech startup called Popsicle. Noah is a thought leader in the advertising technology world and a two-time founder. First, a market research company designed to democratize market research services to fresh and new brands everywhere. And now, after a pivot, which he will tell us a lot about, Popsicle. Popsicle, spelled with an X, not a C, is a meta-pixel booster that startups who rely on Facebook and Instagram ads can use to optimize the performance of their social media advertising. Noah will explain what a pixel is and how Popsicle works, but not before he launches us into a fascinating history of brands playing on Facebook and Instagram, including the genesis of the like button and how it changed advertising, especially for startups, forever. Noah has a great philosophy which dovetails nicely with our readership, I believe. The thread throughout his career has been a commitment to help level the playing field for small and growing businesses. Noah is an advertising veteran, an extremely experienced Facebook developer, and as mentioned, a founder of multiple businesses and a next-level thinker. The man also has the clear and calm type of voice that you just want to listen to, in my humble opinion. So I'm thankful to Noah King from Popsicle for being the first ever Fate vs. Future podcast guest. Fate vs. Future is a 5-minute daily read all about culture, Web3, and business. It's designed to help keep busy professionals on top of these three fast-moving worlds. Our philosophy is in our name, which comes from the fact that most new businesses don't make it past their first few years. Hate that fate. We're here to help everyone own a better future. A 5-minute read to make you 10 times smarter. Sign up to the newsletter at 10xsmarter.com. That's 10xsmarter.com. On to the podcast. This is Fate vs. Future, Episode 1, talking with Noah King, founder and CEO of the advertising technology startup Popsicle. Hi, I'm John Callis. Welcome to the first ever Fate vs. Future podcast. I'm pleased and thankful to have Noah King from Popsicle with me as our very first guest. We're going to talk about all things online advertising, specifically Popsicle's product, which overcomes a hurdle that the introduction of iOS 14 presented to online marketers. He can introduce himself much better than I can, so I'll pass the mic over to Noah. Thank you very much for joining.
You're very welcome, John. It's a pleasure. Always good to think with you, think out loud, and hear, hopefully add some value to your audience. Quick introduction. As you mentioned, I'm the co-founder of an ad tech company called Popsicle. My background is in marketing. I've worked with big ad agencies doing organic social strategy, social content, paid social, ad tech. Basically, as the industry's evolved these last 10 years, just kind of keeping up with the changes.
Very cool. How did you move from advertising into pure play tech?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I went to grad school in 2009. There was a media lab-like program at NYU Tisch, and I learned about social media theory as it was emerging. I learned about web development kind of in the early days and was super interested in all of those things. What I walked out with was the raw ingredients needed to start a business, but I ended up taking the route of going as a strategist into advertising agencies. I loved working at big companies, really enjoyed being surrounded by just a ton of smart people, very interdisciplinary, and I grew up loving marketing and ads. And then over the years, I just continue to have the itch. You get to know an industry, you see opportunities, and I had the itch to go out on my own and be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm extremely intrigued and into it because actually in my 15 years now in advertising, there are actually very, very, very few examples I can think of people making that move from inside agency ecosystem to actual proper startup founder, kind of taking the creative and lateral thinking, which is something that I love writing about, and applying that to non-advertising fields. So yeah, I'm very into it, and thank you very much. I wonder if you could give all of us a bit of a background on the overall landscape of online marketing. We all know Facebook and Instagram ads, but I wonder if you could basically show us behind the curtain a little bit.
Yeah, and I can give some context, just like the last 10 years in an express timeline. I mean, I think when digital ads or digital marketing really became a thing as the internet just blossomed and was widely adopted, it was considered new, right? If you were a brand and you were thinking about whether it was search, whether it was social, forget even Amazon originally, those were all experimental budgets. And I remember working in that industry, we were always going to clients and trying to say to them, you should try this. Or if you're going to try this, here's how to set yourself up for success. And then for the last 5 years, that chapter was complete. Digital was embraced. A lot of brands became digital first. And really with the pandemic, it was just this incredible accelerant. A lot of the world was already digitally native, but the lockdown was a forcing function. And now brands that maybe were mostly retail had to figure out e-commerce. Brands that had a toe in e-commerce went all in. And I would say that really for the last 2 years, digital has been really paramount and critically important for any brand, whether they're doing upper funnel branding work and awareness, or whether they're trying to sell and convert through an online website or e-commerce platform. And really, through that journey, it's become really complex. There's a lot of specialists. Most people are working with ad tech solutions. They're working with agencies. There's so many channels. There's so much nuance. There's a lot of algorithms powering all of it. So, like anything, it starts off where, 10 years ago, maybe you had a digital strategist and they were the Jane of all trades. And now you might have, a much more complicated team. I mean, at a big company, it might be, an ad operations technologist. Like, I don't even know what that is, but like you need that person because there's just so much detail and so much complexity.
And you're touching on actually exactly what I wanted to get at, which is peering through that complexity and getting to a little bit of clarity. And I guess maybe I'll set this up a little bit more specifically for entrepreneur today. It feels like you have maybe 2 or 3 online advertising options only. And I wonder if you could just talk through your understanding of the 2 or 3 most common advertising platforms and also the type of stuff that gets placed on it.
So I would say the big 3 are Facebook, Google, Amazon. Those are the tech titans. If you look specifically at where spend is going, like what percentage of dollars spent on paid media, those 3 have overwhelmingly the lion's share. I think it's maybe, I don't know the statistic, but I want to say it's like 80-90+%. Not everyone's on Amazon. Sometimes people own their own sales channel. Maybe they're on Shopify. They're not selling through Amazon. I also think influencers become a really big channel as well. Even if it's your brand telling your story, there's sort of this shared stage with a lot of ordinary people who have developed audiences. So I don't know if that necessarily qualifies as a channel. Maybe it encompasses Instagram and TikTok and some other, even podcasts. But those are kind of the big 4 in my mind.
And then the rules, and I don't mean the terms of service, but I guess I mean best practices differ across those 4.
The way I think about it is which of those channels are being used for tactics that are really directly tied to a sale, a conversion. I would say Google and Amazon most directly are just all in on, again, whether it's a funnel, that's like the lower funnel conversion, but really it comes down to behavior as well. So if I get to the point where I'm on Amazon and I'm typing in keywords, I have a need. And I'm there and I know what my need is, and my keystrokes are turning into intent signals. And whether I'm searching on Amazon and forgoing Google altogether, or whether maybe I start on a Google search, those are really granular specific tools that take that intent and turn it into click actions, purchases, revenue, etc. Facebook is somewhat in the middle. So Facebook, which is now Meta, which includes Instagram and their audience network, it's a complex network. That entire suite can be used for either awareness and upper funnel, getting to hear a story, watching a video, raising your awareness, or it could be used as sort of a direct response lower funnel tactic as well. And I would say the influence side is usually just in that upper funnel. And part of that's because of measurement and attribution. If you see a post where, let's say, an influencer is doing an unboxing video and they're, although they're being paid, they really believe in this product and they're telling you all about it and you're sort of experiencing their experience as they get to know it, you're probably not going to click the video and it takes you to a shopping cart. But it's planting the seed in your mind. You're like, oh, wow, I'd never heard of that handbag, that sneaker, those sunglasses, that keto diet food. So that's how I think about it. And, I think that the best marketing, you're always thinking about your customer, you're thinking about their experience. And, if you do any kind of journey work, you're kind of thinking about, well, how do they first discover the brand? How do they get to know our product and maybe go through a consideration process? And then finally, when they're ready, how do we make sure that we can convert that interest? So again, that bottom funnel is the end of those steps. I would say influencers probably at the beginning, and Facebook is uniquely kind of spanning that whole experience.
That's very, very clear. And I really, really like the connection to the sales funnel, which is probably one of the most commonly used marketing tools even before people get into deciding their advertising platforms. So let's stick with Facebook. I wonder if you could explain to us, including myself, a bit more about Facebook's Pixel, or Meta's Pixel, I should call it now. What is the Pixel and what's it used for?
So I created a Facebook account as a user in 2007. Then when I was in grad school in 2009, I was studying social media theory. And the first big thing was Facebook invented the like button. It's hard to imagine a world without the like button. But, to the normal person, it was like, oh, here's this little button I can click and I can tell other people what I'm into. And this is a reflection of my identity and my values. But really what it was Facebook saying, how can we get the entire internet to install our code on their website? And then we can capture all these intent signals, all these interest signals from basically the entire web. So that was step one. And that was a huge, huge change that basically empowered Facebook to become Facebook. Because prior to that, they were, again, a small player, very little revenue, if any, doing banner ads in the right margin. Then they invented the Pixel. And the Pixel was taking that concept of a like button and just putting it on steroids. So not only did you have code on your site that was sending events and actions and clicks and impressions and whatever happening on your website back to Facebook, but it wasn't just a like button. It was actually capturing everything. So that was, again, a very clever way to say, hey, brands, we're going to create value for you. We're going to help measure what's happening after the click on our Facebook ads. When people go to your site, we're going to be able to tie that back to your Facebook ads. But really, again, they convinced the world, you should install our code on your site. And then Facebook basically had half of all the web data that was in the world going directly to them. And guess what? Google had the other half because of Google Analytics. Similar strategy. Oh, put our little snippet of code. It'll help add value. But really, Facebook and Google, they are embedded in everyone's sites.
I just want to make sure that we're understanding this properly. So Facebook invents the like button. It is both an attempt to make their own site sticky. That's probably that's where most people's understanding stops. All right, yeah, that lets me express myself exactly as you said. But really what it is, it's a capture. It's some sort of capture device for all of these intent signals, as you put it. The question I have is, did they have that, or do you know, did they have that advertising plan when the like button came out? Or was this kind of like a serendipitous, happy, to the extent that you know, we can also use this for this kind of situation?
I mean, it's hard to remember. It was, I think, 2010 when that came out. I remember I was in a social media theory class that Clay Shirky taught at NYU, and I remember we were discussing it, and we were all like, oh, yeah, we saw the headline, so what? And the professor was like, no, this is a big deal. But there's been so much that's happened since then. It's really hard to remember, like, did anyone really know where it was coming?
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the time, it may have been somewhat innocuous. It may have just been around, like at that time, a lot of brands were basically figuring out how to create a Facebook profile, a brand page, post organic content, and try to build more of a relationship with their customers. So, having a like button was just a way to start to understand, oh, this person likes my product, liked my post, liked my page. And if you recall, sort of a vanity metric, but brands who were building these Facebook profiles, they were competing over who had more likes. Oh, Coca-Cola has 1 million likes. And, having a like button on your page was only half as good as having a like button all over your website. So I don't know if they had premeditated the whole ad tech monetization and all of that. When I think back, like I was working at an ad agency in Boston in 2011, and really we weren't doing that much paid advertising, again, beyond getting page likes, these vanity metrics, maybe until like 2013. So yeah, I think it took a couple years. It may have actually been when Sheryl Sandberg joined the company. I think she was trying to think about monetization, and yeah, I'm thinking about this out loud. I want to say there was a couple steps that led to that event, but the like button in hindsight was really a critical moment.
And then the pixel, as you said, pixel is the like button on steroids. And again, it is a tool that is presented to website operators, whatever service they might be providing. In the example that I wrote about, that I was inspired by an article that I saw, it was actually hospitals and doctors' offices embedding the pixel in their scheduling pages. But that is
Right.
their, in other words, the pitch to website operators is look at all of the different, or get a better view, I should say, at all of the different activities that visitors are performing on your sites, right? What are the different signals that they're sending? Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think there's two parts. One part is around attribution and one part is around machine learning. And again, I'm going to keep this at a high level. So let's assume, you and I are working on a business that sells women's shoes, right? And you run a Facebook ad and it's like, "Hey, check out this new shoe drop." And a person sees it and they're like, "This is awesome. I want this shoe." And they click. Well, now they've left Instagram or Facebook and now they've gone to the website. If there wasn't a pixel on that website, all Facebook could do is say, "Well, we got you a click." But you're not in the business of getting clicks. You're in the business of selling shoes. So once you have that pixel,
Right.
well, now Facebook's line of sight extends all the way through that purchase path. And when the pixel fires on a purchase, it's sending a signal back to Facebook and it says, I'll use my wife's name, Beth. "Hey, Beth clicked your ad on Facebook, went to your site, checked out, and she just bought a pair of shoes for $129. So now Facebook can attribute that purchase and essentially triangulate and say, "Okay, we know that Beth's a Facebook user. We know that she saw this ad impression. We know that she clicked it. Now we know that she purchased it." And when you connect those dots, well, now your ad is actually creating a business outcome that's measurable and valuable. And without that, you're kind of stuck selling likes, selling comments. I don't know if you remember, people were sort of, "Oh, I got engagement." Okay, but you can't go to your CEO and say, "Oh, our engagement rate's twice as high." You want to say our revenue's twice as high. So it really helped Facebook become not just a frivolous, vanity kind of thing, vanity play, but really a business driver.
Right.
And as a result, a lot of businesses scaled using Facebook. So that's the attribution side. The other side is machine learning. So simultaneously, Facebook, very sophisticated business. I would actually argue that Facebook's machine learning is probably the world's largest scale and most effective machine learning enterprise ever built.
Wow.
Maybe better than any other business. MIT and NASA and whatever. I feel like Facebook built something better. So imagine that one instance where Beth clicks, buys the shoe, it pings back Facebook. We'll do that at scale. And now all of a sudden, Facebook says, "Well, geez, we've got an audience of 50 million people, and we have this auction-based system where we're figuring out who to show the ad to next out of those 50 million. Well, we know Beth just bought. Let's find more people like Beth." And now instead of just arbitrarily guessing which million people to show out of 50 million, it knows exactly who to show it to because it knows all their interests, all their clicks, all their friends, etc. And you're starting to send these signals that said, "This is what good looks like. This is what a purchase looks like. Now find more people like that." And that system is what made Facebook perform much better than anyone else. And for every dollar you put into that system, you got more than a dollar out of it, and Facebook became this mega platform.
Right. To continue that analogy of the two of us, right? Facebook's able to say, "Look at this creative, this specific ad caused this specific $129 purchase." Number one. Number two, because it's linked to Beth's Instagram account, we know all of Beth's activity, right, on Instagram, and we can mirror her. So in other words, find a lot of similar people and send that same ad to that very similar group of people. At that pitch,
Correct.
right, you can basically be smarter because you are sharing this information with us. You're basically opening the door for more effective, more efficient advertising. Give it to us and we will give you back.
The best metaphor and this gets really complicated. These are, what is machine learning? What is a pixel? All these events, like it's very abstract. So here's a very tangible example. Imagine we're selling ice cream bars at Fenway Park in Boston, the big baseball stadium. And I'm the poor guy with the big, the frozen box on my shoulder. And I'm trudging up and down the stairs and I'm saying, "Ice cream, ice cream, ice cream." And you say, "Oh, I'll buy an ice cream." Well, maybe you happen to be one seat in from the aisle and I happen to hand you the bar and you give me the $2 and I'm just slogging through the day, getting my steps in. That is a hard job. Well, if you apply machine learning to that, Facebook has filled this stadium of people and it's trying to sell, ice cream. But every time you check out, it says, "Oh, interesting, John just bought ice cream. okay, so John is a white male between 30 and 50. He has facial hair. He's wearing a white shirt. Let's go find more John. And now instead of it being convenient to walk up and down the aisles, it's like laser focused trying to find all the people like you in that stadium. Which system do you think is going to do a better job of selling ice cream?
Right. Very compelling pitch. Very compelling pitch. And so enter to this ecosystem something called iOS 14. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So basically everything we talked about is going on for years. I would say by, 2016, Facebook is a very effective marketing platform where you put money in, it turns into positive, what we call return on ad spend, measurable business metrics based on the money you spent. And you fast forward to 2021, and there's like this 5-year, growth trajectory where Facebook goes from being a player to the player. I want to say in 2020, in their earnings call, they said they brought in $100 billion in ad revenue. So that's major. So 2021, with great intentions, Apple says, whoa, everyone's concerned about privacy. People feel like they're being surveilled online. Again, the pandemic happens. Everyone's at home. We're much more aware of how all this stuff is happening. And they released this new operating system, iOS 14. And the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Their good intentions were to protect users, but what it ended up doing is it took that functionality of sending data from a website back to Facebook and back to other sites, and it basically put it on a data diet. So now the Facebook pixel, half the data that it could be sending back is getting thrown out because it didn't have the right permission. If you, John, opt out and say, whoa, I don't want Facebook looking at my data, well, even though they collected the data and even though they can send it back via the pixel, the data was getting ignored. So, again, it was intended to empower you to have more control over your privacy. But I think that what most people felt creeped out about was, everyone seems to think, I don't think this is true, by the way, but everyone seems to think Facebook is listening to their phone. Oh, I talked about Hawaii and then I got an ad for Hawaiian Airlines. How do you explain that, right? So that's what people wanted to cut down on. But who actually got hurt wasn't Hawaiian Airlines. Who got hurt are all the medium-sized businesses, the smaller players who, because of Instagram ads, they were able to build a business, a really viable business, selling a really great product that their customers loved. And, as a customer of those brands, I'm happy to let them attribute my click on their site back to their ads that their ad performs better. I don't want to block that. I don't want to hurt that business. But despite those intentions, that's who got hurt. So I'm sure you've seen it over the last year. This first occurred in end of April 2021. There's a ton of businesses that have literally gone out of business because they quickly scaled up with very efficient Instagram ads. And when those ads became half as effective, the unit economics stopped working and they couldn't grow anymore.
I want to understand, if I could please, the mechanics, the reasons that the data diet, the specific data diet was, to go back to the Beth's example, let's say post iOS 14, exact same scenario. She gets served up an Instagram from our shoe company, clicks through, makes the purchase. Now that all Facebook knows now is that she clicked through, right? We don't know, Facebook, doesn't know whether or not she's made that purchase. Is that correct?
Correct. So, and let's think about it at scale. So there's hundreds of people like Beth, and Facebook says, all right, I know that there are all these clicks. I know what happened on our platform, but now once people leave the platform, essentially it can still get the signal that a purchase occurred, but it's like a purchase with a question mark. Like imagine instead of it showing Beth's face, it's just a question mark. Somebody checked out. Well, somebody added to cart. Well, somebody viewed that particular page. So it's about identity. Pixel's still working, but if it can't be matched back to an identity, you kind of shrug your shoulders and like, well, I got some sales, but I'm not sure who. So the biggest negative impact, again, let's separate attribution from machine learning. So yes, some of the attribution gets weaker because you're missing some of those events. You're not sure, did it double count or not? Or did it actually tie back the purchase back to a Facebook impression? Maybe not. So that gets really bad. But all of a sudden, this brilliant machine learning system, the best in the world, it goes on a data diet. Half the people, it doesn't know who they are. And now instead of being in that stadium saying, oh, let me find more Johns, it's let me find more I don't know who. That doesn't work. So, to use another metaphor, the machine learning engine that Facebook built, it's like a Ferrari V12 engine that's high everything, high octane, high power, high performance. If you don't put the right fuel in it, it's not going to work very well. And basically, without the right data, that whole system just fell apart.
Right. Or to use that Fenway analogy, it's the same ice cream seller. He sold me an ice cream, but all Facebook knows is somebody in my section bought an ice
Yeah,
cream.
it's way less specific, way less actionable. In some ways, it just leveled the playing field, right? So all the other ad platforms, all the other places where you could spend ad dollars, all your other channels that you could choose from, they didn't have Facebook's machine learning either, right? So all of a sudden, Facebook went from being more efficient and more productive and more economical to just being kind of average.
And this might sound like a basic question, but iOS 14, does this only apply to Safari on the iPhone, or does it also apply to Safari on desktop? And what if you are on Google Chrome on a Mac?
So this is to the best of my knowledge. I'm a thought leader in the space. I know a lot about this, but it's just not well documented. So my understanding is this. Let's assume, again, you and I are running this business selling women's shoes. It's a Shopify site. If all you do is use standard tools, right? If you use the Facebook Pixel, you drop it in your site, you use the Shopify storefront, you build your site, you turn on some Facebook Shopify connection, you're not really thinking through terms of service. You're not really creating your own contract with your site visitors on how you're going to think about their data. You're just piggybacking on Shopify's terms, who's piggybacking on Facebook's terms, who's piggybacking on Apple's terms. So if way, way, way down that chain, John123 said, yeah, I don't want I don't want Facebook to track me. Well, that's affecting Shopify now. So in my opinion, I love rooting for challenger brands. I want to support the medium businesses, the little guys, so to speak. It really hurt them again. So yeah, it's really interesting how this whole story has unfolded.
But the device you're on, so it sounds like, sorry, this iOS 14 update is actually not just if you're on a phone, right?
Right. Sorry, I got a little distracted.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, so, the average person isn't sitting in one single serving and saying, oh, I saw an ad, I clicked, I went to the site, I purchased. It's way more complex than that, as you know. And it even depends on what the product is. I mean, if you're buying a mattress, that might take 6 months. If you're buying a car, you might be researching for a year. Even if it happens over a few days, maybe some of the experiences on your iPad, which is iOS, but then you complete it on your desktop, which is a Windows device. There's just a lot of complexity. But the fact that a lot of those signals aren't getting back and aren't being matched to you, it's caused a lot more havoc than you think. So the original concern a year ago is, this is only going to impact the Safari browser on an Apple device, which is a small fraction of our business. And it ended up having a much bigger impact, way greater than anyone.
Because to bring it back to the Pixel, one of the innovations is if you have Facebook or Instagram on your phone and you're installed or logged in, that account is linked to your activity on the browser as well, right? So it's the full picture. Correct. So therefore, even if my activity on my phone that's the data diet, as soon as I'm on my desktop, which is a different device, it's kind of half there, half not. So it's a very kind of confusing, incomplete picture because I might be on two separate devices giving half of my activity, but not the other half, which could create a skew.
Yeah, and Instagram is a huge platform, and Instagram doesn't really have a great desktop experience. So most people who are clicking Instagram ads, it is on an iPhone. And again, there's a split. Some brands are more effective than others. I think right now, I want to say about 60% of all mobile devices are Android operating system. But for a lot of brands, particularly consumer brands at a higher price point, et cetera, they might have 75% of their audience be on Apple devices. So that's why some brands have been more impacted than others.
Right. Enter Popsicle. What does the product do?
Yeah, so let's go back to April of last year. So April of last year, I'm buying ads on Facebook. Millions of other people are. And I start getting these alerts. Hey, here's this change that's coming. And, at the same time that Facebook announced that Apple's change might impact you, they also said, oh, by the way, we built this new tool called the Conversions API. And again, keep it at a high level. The Conversions API was basically a suite of tools that let you create your own Facebook pixel. So instead of using their standard out of the box pixel, you could send your web events directly to Facebook. You could be in greater control of it. You could build your own attribution server. You could build your own generation 2 pixel. They basically created the piping, so to speak, behind the scenes that would empower a developer to build that type of functionality. And as a Facebook developer, I said, this is great. I'm going to play around with this, and got early access and started to tinker. And April 26th, 2021, iOS 14 goes live, and you start hearing all these little horror stories, oh man, what's going on with our performance? And my business was entirely unaffected. Our performance went up 30% in April, May of last year because we were prepared for it. So all of a sudden, there's this problem and it's affecting everyone. And if you were very, very technically savvy, again, at this point, I had 10 years of experience building Facebook apps. And even for me, it took me hundreds of hours to figure out. But if you put the time in, you could build a solution. So fast forward to a year later, and my team basically figured out, wow, we have the solution. We're hearing left and right how so many people are struggling. We were using it within our market research business as a competitive advantage, right? We were recruiting people via Facebook and Instagram ads to participate in our market research products. And we could do that very efficiently. And we realized there's actually a bigger need for this little product than the market research we're selling. And it actually led to a pivot. And we decided to bring this to market and go all in on this because there's a lot of carnage in the market. There's a lot of people who are struggling, and to know that we can help and solve has been really very rewarding.
So just to understand, in a very happy coincidence, Facebook opens up its API to let Facebook savvy developers create their own pixel. And the purpose of doing that is, let's say you want to finely tune your pixel to pick up on certain information and maybe not others. So for a small group of people who are familiar with coding Facebook apps, you could tweak your pixel to get around some of the roadblocks that iOS 14 put in, or what is the mechanism? Like what is so special about bespoke Facebook pixels?
This is going to go really deep down the weeds, so just jump in if I take it too far, but the best part about this conversions API, known as CAPI, is you're sending what's known as server to server. So the standard website pixel that Facebook created, it's basically sitting on the front end. It's sitting within your browser. It kind of sees like what the consumer sees. But if you're server to server, you're going deeper. You're going into the actual web server where the payment's being processed, where the purchase is being recorded, where Shopify is, sending you an email alert. Like, you're going right to the source. So if you're not at that source, you're going to miss some of the events. People might have ad blockers installed, or their internet connection is bad. And even without iOS 14, the Pixel worked pretty well most of the time. But to build this server-to-server capability, it basically unlocked tools to not just work around the iOS 14 issue, but to really get to a next level of, again, higher volume of signals, higher quality of signals, and more control. So one of the side effects that's really favorable is before you'd install the Facebook pixel on your entire site, and basically you gave Facebook access to your entire site, everything that was happening. That's a little bit risky. If you turn on a server-to-server connection, you get to choose what you're sending, when you're sending it, how you're sending it. You have way more control. So one of the first customers that I helped implement this was actually a health tech company. They weren't just dealing with personally identifiable information, PII. They were dealing with personal health information, PHI, which is heavily, heavily regulated because of HIPAA and all these other compliance best practices. And they were like, this is great. We want to use this conversions API because now we have more control over what we're sending. So really, it's not a coincidence that Facebook launched it. It was in reaction to the changes that Apple was making, but it wasn't just to go from, pretty good, now we have a problem, now we're back to good. It was to go from good to great. So it's not even just restoring to pre-iOS. Again, using the engine metaphor, it's going from okay 89 octane fuel to rocket fuel, 97 octane fuel.
Just to complete the picture, you have an online market research business. Could you tell us a little bit about that, just so we get the full picture of the pivot?
Yeah. So again, I've worked at big agencies. My passion is to help challenger brands and kind of mid-sized companies, growth companies, and we wanted to democratize market research. We know how valuable it is to get consumer feedback. We're building a software tool that was making that more accessible, more affordable, faster, easier, etc. Really a business I am very passionate about and believe in. And we had figured out this Facebook solution kind of as an internal tool just to help our ads perform better. And then fast forward to the spring, and we're on all these different client calls, and we're just hearing there's a lot of suffering going on. People would say, well, geez, I'd love to buy your market research, but I got to figure out my Instagram ads first. And, all of a sudden you do a pattern match and you're like, I think people are more interested in getting Facebook to keep working. And the market research is more like the vitamin that eventually they'll take because it's good for their health, but like they need a painkiller to solve this Facebook problem. And that's when we decided to pivot. I think at the time we had worked with like 20 or 25 market research customers over a 2-year period. And now we've been live with Popsicle for about 60 days, and we already have 32 customers. So, we've gotten more traction in 2 months than we had gotten in 2 years.
That's incredible. And so your old company is using Cappy, right? Using server-to-server pixel tech in order to recruit respondents for the market research service that you were providing.
From Facebook and Instagram, correct.
And so that's a purely internal tool. And you heard just listening to your clients, hey, you know what? We love the market research, but we have this acute and very, very, very pressing and actually hurting issue. And the brainwave on your end is like, wait a minute, this tool that we've been using ourselves could actually be the thing that happens to be answering our client's biggest need.
That's exactly it.
Well, 35 customers in 2 months, as you said. But do you have an information hurdle in trying to explain everything that you just spent the past half hour explaining me? Or are customers savvy and they know all about Cappy and they're just looking for a way around it? What's the pitch, basically?
I think the shortest pitch is basically to just listen. And I get on the phone with someone and I say, hey, you tell me, how have you been impacted by iOS 14? And as soon as I ask that question, you cannot imagine the horror stories that I've heard about businesses collapsing, businesses failing, people scrambling. You want to be able to have efficient, repeatable systems. And this has really caused a lot of chaos for digital marketers. And again, already there's a problem with lots of complexity. And now the sure thing, Facebook, went from being, the one channel you could count on to now you can't even count on Facebook. So typically, we don't even really have a pitch. We just say, how have you been affected? Well, we have a solution that fixes that. And that's enough for people to say, all right, let me try it. And we have a 2-week free pilot. So you get to try it, no risk. And within 24 hours, people see, wow, I'm getting more events. There's a tool called Events Manager. You immediately see a spike in events. Then within a few days, wait a second, my ads are performing better. I'm getting a higher return on ad spend. My attribution that was missing before is now back. I'm seeing my data in real time, going out of the learning phase even faster. And it just makes sense. You're like, oh, wait a second. Instead of being on this data diet, now the system's getting better data than ever, and everything just starts working optimally. And the way that machine learning works is it's a feedback loop. So once you have better data, then you have better performance and it scales and you get more better data. And 3-4 weeks in, we've been seeing between 40 and 75% lift in return on ad spend. That's notable. That's not incremental. So yeah, it's been a great couple and people have been really happy with it.
And so 2 questions to follow up. What sort of businesses? Anybody and everybody who would be advertising on Facebook? Or have you noticed a type of business or type of service provider or products?
Yeah, so there's 2 kind of, we call them ideal customer profiles. So one is consumer brands, let's call them Shopify brands. They're not all on Shopify. Some are on WooCommerce or other platforms. But, direct-to-consumer brands that have a product, brought it to market, advertise on Instagram, and we're able to help them optimize their sales funnel, get more return on ad spend, get better targeting, get better attribution, et cetera. I think that's sort of what we've been talking about in our examples. The second ideal customer profile are actually lead gen companies. So we're working with a couple financial services brands. I mentioned a health tech brand. There's a couple coaching services. These are companies where their goal is to get you to fill out a form on their website that says, email me back with more information. Think of it more of like a Salesforce HubSpot type play. Those are companies that really didn't even have something good going on before iOS 14. The site pixel didn't necessarily work. A lot of them have homegrown websites that are really complex, particularly financial services. So if you went from an okay out of the box Cappy solution, this server to server solution, and now you get Popsicle, it's like going from good to great. But a lot of these banks and others, they're going from nothing to great. So we're having even bigger impact for them. The one thing we're sort of thinking about it as a business is it's much easier to install a Shopify app 100 times. When you work with these lead gen companies with bespoke websites, it's a little bit more of a custom tailored solution. So we're just trying to figure out how to think through that from a complexity and repeatability standpoint. But yeah, those are our 2 ideal customers.
What is the product exactly? Is it an interface that allows your customers to work with Cappy directly? or literally what does it look like and how does it work?
So it's one line of code that you put into the page template, like the header or the footer on your website, just like you would do if you were installing Google Analytics or Facebook's original Pixel.
Mm-hmm.
And what it does is it takes all of the custom web server custom build that we did for ourselves, and it makes it accessible to anyone. So instead of being me with 10 years experience and hundreds of hours, you pay a service fee to our company and you get all the same benefits. And in some ways, the technology is invisible.
Mm-hmm.
Your site doesn't look any different. You turn it on once, and then once that connection is made, there's just data being sent. The only way to see what's happening
Mm-hmm.
is you can track those events in the events manager in Facebook. Everything we're sending is native Facebook data. It's not instead of their pixel, it's on top of, in addition to. So if you're in Facebook, you're seeing those events show up, you're seeing your ads do better. We're starting to play around with some dashboards that, again, shine a light into that darkness. We don't want to be a black box. We want to empower people to understand, okay, I got better performance. Why? So we're starting to show people, here's all the events that we sent. Here's the different types of events. Here's the data that was included. And it's starting to illuminate, the how and the why behind the performance boost.
And how is that dashboard info sent? Because it sounds like currently the dashboard experience is Facebook Ad Manager, right? You just have better data coming through. Or is there a separate Popsicle login and a separate interface?
Yeah, so there is. Again, it's very crude. We've been in market for 2 months, but for people on Shopify, when they install our Shopify app and they open it, there's an admin screen where you can see all your different app settings. There's just a very simple dashboard that kind of shows you, hey, in the last week, here's all the events that you sent. Here's all the information that was sent with the events. And then also for people who aren't on Shopify, there is a login to our website where, again, when you configure your account, there's some settings you put in. There's just a dashboard tab. But that's one area we're going to invest considerably in the future.
A kind of bespoke or custom user interface. And then what are the settings that that a customer can tweak? Can they choose demographics, for example? Or
today there aren't too many settings. It's really just making sure that it's configured to the right account. So if you turn on our tool, you're sending data to Facebook, how does it know which pixel to send it to? You have to put in the pixel ID. In order to send it, you need to get a conversions API token. You have a little box where you put in the token. You can send test events and make sure they're showing up. It's really very functional. When you bring a product to market this quickly, our number one goal is that it's effective. A lot of the other niceties we're trying to close the gap on, but it's a pretty bare bones product today in terms of user interface.
For sure. Well, that's a feature, sometimes, maybe even most times,
Exactly.
Especially for busy B2B businesses. So then do you ever think about Facebook somehow doing that same thing, somehow making CAPI functionality easier to use? Is that something that you guys have thought about?
Yep.
Right.
So first of all, Facebook did build CAPI. So I don't think Facebook is going to reverse engineer our product. Our product is using the platform that they made available. We're helping more brands use it well. So I don't think there's any risk of Facebook. I mean, Facebook literally has empowered us to exist. But there's a host of other products that are out there. So a lot of the attribution tools, we're huge fans of Elevar and Triple Whale and Northbeam and Hyros. I mean, these are great ad tech companies that their main focus is around attribution. Oh, and by the way, we have a feature where we have a CAPI integration, right? Or if you're in Shopify, Shopify has a built-in CAPI integration. But that's like CAPI Lite. So the big misnomer in the industry is CAPI is either on or off, like a light switch. It's off, okay, now it's on. What we figured out is it's way more nuanced. So how are you collecting the information? How are you structuring it? When are you sending it? How do you make sure you're getting everything? And when we've turned on our product, even if someone already had CAPI turned on, they're getting more event volume, they're getting higher event signal, and they're still getting better performance. So I think we've basically decided we don't want to be the Swiss Army knife. We want to be the can opener. We're going to do one thing well. And if you want to be on CAPI, we're going to get you better data on CAPI than anyone else.
CAPI optimization.
Yep. And this is a moving landscape. So one of the biggest risks is iOS 16, 16.5, 17 going to come out and break everything again? Is there some law that's going to, like a GDPR or a CCPA law that's going to come in and break everything? We're a speedboat. We can be very agile and move. Some of the bigger tech titans, by the time they figure this out, those are like these mega ships that steer really slowly. So as soon as they figure it out and then the next shoe falls, we're going to pivot on a dime, and they're going to be trying to figure out for 6 months where to go next. So I really feel like we're well positioned with this hyper focus, but also the agility to kind of roll with the punches.
Very cool. Very, very, very interesting. It goes without saying that Cappy, being a Facebook product, lives exclusively in the Facebook ecosystem. What about Google Analytics or TikTok advertising? These are completely separate ecosystems, but are they similar in ways?
They are, yeah. So this concept of a conversions API, Google now has one, TikTok and Snapchat now have one. It's in our roadmap to develop the same functionality where the same popsicle code gets installed once on your site and it's sending it to multiple destinations. But we're just not there yet. We'll probably be there in 4 to 6 months. Our focus today was, where is there the biggest pain? It's Facebook. Where is there the biggest scale? It's Facebook. That's where we've put 100% of our focus initially.
But this overall, if you zoom out, Conversion API exists on, it sounds like, all the major advertising platforms, and a need to optimize that Conversion API is obvious as well. And the big threat, it sounds like, would come from further developments in the iOS space that are specifically focused on cutting down that information flow.
Or regulatory, yeah. There could be some new law that gets passed. So, again, I think that most users do feel like they're being surveilled. They feel like they're not in control of their data. Like, this is a really important thing to figure out as a society. And, I expect there to be more laws. And hopefully the laws, what's the saying? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. My agenda is help the growth businesses, the challenger brands. Like, a lot of the bigger companies aren't even impacted by this stuff. They have so much scale. They have unlimited war chests of resources. They're going to figure it out. It's the little companies that get hurt. So we expect there to be more changes, and hopefully companies like ours are going to help people navigate them well.
Well, I have to say, in the past 45 minutes, I've learned even more than I thought I would, and I thought I'd be in for a lot. I really appreciate you talking us through our business, the landscape. As mentioned, this is the first of what I hope will be many podcasts like this. Would you share the URL actually with us so anybody listening could visit the site and find out more?
So the company's popsicle.com, and instead of it being spelled popsicle CLE, it's just XLE, kind of a nod to the pixel. So POPSIXLE.com.
Noah King, thank you very, very much for a really enjoyable last 45 minutes.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Talk to you soon.
Fate vs. Future is a 5-minute daily read all about culture, Web3, and business. It's designed to help keep busy professionals on top of these 3 fast-moving worlds. A 5-minute read to make you 10 times smarter. Sign up to the newsletter at 10xsmarter.com. That's 10xsmarter.com.